Well, warm welcome to you, Ambassador Denis, Alipov, to the Center for Social and Economic Progress. Today is Thursday, the 8th of September, 2022. That's for the record. We had a statement from our Prime Minister yesterday referring to India's relations with Russia in very, very positive terms. I want to go back as far back as the 1950s, shortly after India's independence, when Mr. Bulganin and Mr. Khrushchev came to Delhi in 1955. They also went to a few other places. And shortly thereafter, Russia supported India in production of steel. I think the two plants came up in 59 and 64 in Bhilai and Bokaro respectively. So I would like you to give us your reaction about cooperation between India and Russia in the civilian sectors first, and then we'll move on to other areas, defense, high technology, and so on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhagwati, dear Jaimini. Our acquaintance goes back for years, and I'm happy to re-establish it, and I'm thankful for the invitation. It's great to be today with you. We can go back even further than 1950s and recall that along with the celebration of the 75th independence anniversary this year, we also celebrate the 75 years of diplomatic relations between our countries. And again, the first diplomatic presence of Russia goes back to 1900, when it was yet a Russian Empire, and the British India, and the first consular agent of the Russian Empire was established in Bombay at that time, and the British were quite reluctant to allow,
I can well imagine.
to allow that. But still, we have a long history of relations, which, as you correctly put, reached its golden age and began to flourish in the mid last century, when the Soviet Union at that time began a massive technical, financial, technological assistance and cooperation with India. You mentioned the steel plants in Bhilai and Bokaro, that's correct, and we also participated in construction of hydro projects in various areas like the Tehri Dam in Uttarakhand. And of course, we initiated a very close and comprehensive cooperation in the space sector. The first Indian in space flew on a Russian spacecraft together with Russian cosmonauts in 1990. Well, when was that? In 1984. The first Indian satellite was sent to orbit with the Soviet assistance. So there are so many examples, we can count them on and on, and we are very proud of this legacy, and the strategic partnership which we established in 2000 rests on this heritage, and builds the accumulated baggage of that very massive and diversified cooperation that the Soviet Union had with India.
Thank you, Denis. That was very useful, particularly I'm sure for younger audiences who don't have a memory about this long association that India has had with the Soviet Union after its independence and more recently with Russia. Well, when the Soviet Union was still Soviet Union in I'm moving on to another area of cooperation in the field of atomic energy. You might ask why atomic energy? It's high tech, it requires a great deal of specialization. So 1988, our then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi signed an agreement with the then head of state of Russia, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev, for collaborating in the area of nuclear power. But then, as we all know, the Soviet Union ceased to exist in 1991, and nothing much happened about that agreement till 1998. Curiously, and those who are keen followers of strategic matters and foreign policy will note that the question of collaboration on nuclear power came up in June 1998, just a month after India had tested its own nuclear weapons. And then, as we all know, in Kalpakkam, 6 nuclear power reactors have been envisaged, of which I believe 2 are already fully functional, maybe 1 more. Ambassador, if you could tell us a little more about collaboration in the field of nuclear energy. I'm not getting into anything confidential here. We are only talking about power, and as we know, in today's time, fuel has become a major issue. We'll talk about that later on, but nuclear power and its importance, as France has, I think, maybe 75% of its power comes from nuclear power reactors. So if you could give us a sense of where Russia is as far as nuclear power and energy is concerned, and any other details you would like to share.
Indeed, the construction of the Kudankulam power station is one of our landmark projects, bilateral projects. There's a host of agreements to this effect. Later, after 1988, we signed several more in addition, including the roadmap for the construction of nuclear power plants in India of Russian design. We envisage a continuation of cooperation in the civil nuclear energy beyond Kudankulam. But this power station in the south of India is going very well, more or less according to the schedule. There are 6 reactors at this site. 2 are fully functional already. 4 are under construction at various stages. We divide them into 3 stages: the first and the second and the third stage of the station. And each reactor is at 1,000 kilowatts capacity. So altogether, it would be a massive power station, providing a huge amount of power to the south of India and to the whole of the country. We consider nuclear energy as one of the indispensable assets in today's world, in today's energy resources, in the context of the energy security. We consider it a clean clean energy, which under safeguards, necessary conditions, is absolutely safe and clean in terms of
the environment.
Environment. And as I say, we are looking beyond the Kudankulam. We are hopeful that we would reach an agreement for the allotment of the second site for a nuclear power plant's construction. We're in negotiations with the Indian side on this issue for quite some time, but of course this is up to the Indians to decide whether it is ready to go forward. But we are very proud of this part of our cooperation, and you put it very correctly. It is a landmark and one of the drivers, one of the locomotives of our economic cooperation, from the technological point of view, from the high tech, from the point of view of protecting the environment, and generally in our economic cooperation.
Thank you, Ambassador. For those who follow the issue of safeguards from the point of view of the IAEA, you would be interested to know that once the nuclear suppliers group, of which Russia is a member and India is not, was set up in 1992, the United States objected to this project taking off in Kudankulam, and Russia, to our positive surprise, said that, sorry, but this agreement is 1988, which predates 1992, so therefore Russia can collaborate with India in building these power plants in Tamil Nadu. Moving on, Ambassador, you were recently in Cochin for the inaugural ceremony of INS Vikrant. We are proud in India to have built an aircraft carrier, and there again I think there has been much technical collaboration with Russia, and I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, that this aircraft carrier will have MiG-29s on board. Can you tell us a little bit about your visit to Cochin, the launching of this aircraft carrier, and the Russian involvement, both in terms of providing fighter aircraft and also collaboration in the production of this carrier?
Indeed, I was there on the 2nd of September. It was a very impressive and a very proud moment for India, and we are happy to be part of this achievement. This is the first indigenously built aircraft carrier, and India has become one of the few countries who is capable now of constructing by its own such sophisticated vessels and systems, military equipment, products. We participated in it in some smaller part. I mean, in the construction, but you're correct. At the moment, it looks like the MiG-29K. K stands for ship in Russian.
Okay.
Maybe the only option for the time being, but after that, as far as I know, the Tejas fighter is going to be used on that ship. There are the Americans and the French are running around with their products.
Naturally.
But yes, at the moment it looks like the MiG-29s are the only available, readily available option. But besides the fighters, we are also India is also going to use Russian-made helicopters on that ship, to be based on that ship. So from this angle, we are also, not only from the construction, but from the use of this ship, we also participate in this success story of the Indian shipbuilding.
Thank you. At a lower level of technology, but equally important, assault rifles. I believe last year in December 2021, India and Russia signed an agreement that the two defense ministers were present for the production of some very large amount, 600,000 AK-203 assault rifles. You know, very frankly, I'm a little embarrassed that we still need help, support, technical or otherwise, to produce assault rifles. But that is probably because I know very little about assault rifles. Can you fill us in on what is so special and why this agreement was reached, and what exactly is the progress since December last year in implementing this agreement?
Frankly, I don't know much more than you on assault rifles. But if I'm correct, the number is slightly bigger. The number of items to be manufactured.
Even more than 600,000?
Even more than 600,000.
Wow.
We've established a joint venture to this effect. The production is going to start very soon. In Uttar Pradesh at Korba, which falls into the defense production corridor in Uttar Pradesh. This is again one of the landmark projects under the Make in India and Self-Reliant India programs and initiatives. We are very proud that we've been very actively involved in those initiatives for quite some time already. We have been probably the first who have been participating under those schemes. Not only the rifles, the Su-30s aircraft, the T-90 tanks, which have been produced in India for quite some time already. They also fall under the idea of Make in India, and there are other examples. But as far as the rifles are concerned, yes, we are moving on schedule. Hopefully, I will also participate in the launch of the production when it is announced, and we are looking forward to this cooperation with India. India has become at the moment the major Russian defense partner in defense cooperation and defense production, joint production. The Brahmos cruise missiles is the exemplary success in this context. So we are very, very hopeful and very optimistic about the prospects.
For the benefit of the audience, the Brahmos missile is a supersonic missile which is jointly produced by Russia and India, and I think it can strike up to 300 kilometers. Again, I might be not particularly accurate about that. And I remember that at one stage Vietnam was asking for this missile. Of course, we have to jointly decide. I think those are the terms of our agreement, whether India can sell it to a third party, sell it, gift it, transfer it, whatever it is. All this, Ambassador, is very, should we say, at a simple level for you and for many, but I think information is lacking at the general level of the extent of collaboration, cooperation, both on the civil side and on the military side between India and Russia. Now, if I may move on to the mundane subject of trade, that is, but as we both know, trade is very important, and unfortunately, trade compared to other areas of collaboration have not shown the same kind of buoyancy. I think last year, by last year I mean for us the fiscal year starts on the 1st of April. So 1st April 2021 to end March 2022, we imported about 9.8 billion US dollars worth of goods from Russia. I'm only talking about goods trade. And on the, that's what we imported, and what we exported was about 3 point something billion. Given the nature of our relationship, that is relatively low. So to what do you ascribe, because we have been talking about diamonds, we have been talking about rare earths, we are talking about pharmaceuticals, but somehow the trade in goods has not moved up as much as I would have expected. What are the reasons according to you, Ambassador?
I agree with you. You know, we've been pondering about the answer to this million-dollar question. What prevented us from expanding our trade for quite some time? There are various answers possibly to this question, but I think that, you know, when the erstwhile former system of our trade during the Soviet times collapsed, both India launched economic reforms, Russia plunged into turmoil of 1990s, and a free rein capitalism was overnight introduced in my country, and we obviously started to look where that capitalist system flourished to the West, and looked for the established markets, for the established ways and you know, supply chains to cooperate, and probably India also looked westwards, and we somewhat forget about the bilateral relations in this sphere, and later we started to revive it, but still we are in the process. Last year we reached the record level of trade. By the Indian statistics, it's about 9.8, around 10 billion. We count as 11.6 billion USD of trade volumes. This year it would, we can say that for sure already. It would be much larger thanks to the
import of oil.
Import, yes, of oil. But we are naturally looking at the increased exports of India to Russia, and besides diamonds, there are super prospects of pharmaceutical exports to Russia, but not only pharmaceuticals. We also look at traditional Indian commodities like food products, tea,
Chai.
chai.
I think Russia, they use the word chai.
Chai.
Right,
Yes,
yeah.
it's chai. Same in Russian.
Yes. So there is, in Russia, when they want tea, they say they want chai. So that's the influence of Russian exports of tea to Russia. That they have adopted.
I believe that's the influence of Sanskrit on our history.
Makes sense. Please, go ahead. You were saying that our trade is burgeoning. Now, you've referred to the fact that this year trade will be much higher in terms of India's imports of oil. So it naturally leads me to the question of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. I don't want to ask you a question on this. I'd rather you tell us why this conflict, what is the genesis, and what is the situation right now, and then maybe I'll ask a question or two about the conflict. So if you can tell us, why did this happen? Because I think no one in the world, including in Russia, wants loss of life or people getting hurt or destruction of property. So we'd like to hear Russia's point of view as to why this conflict is taking place in Ukraine.
There's been a lot said on this subject and the conflict. I'll point out the very gist of our approach and viewpoint. You know, we've been accused of the unjustified and unprovoked aggression. And that's wrong on both accounts. We don't intend to occupy or subjugate or enslave, as we are being accused of, to enslave Ukraine. We are trying to preserve our security. We wanted to do that by peaceful diplomatic means. We've been trying and stressed that problem at least since 2007, saying to our partners in NATO, to the US in the first place, because they're playing the tune, that we feel insecure because of the NATO enlargement. And all our concerns had been ignored till the very end, till February this year, when we found ourselves in the corner, literally, with no space to retreat, and with the only option to respond as military one. That's the story in the gist. We have seen that Ukraine, to our utmost regret, and I'm sure to the regret of the large part of the Ukrainian people, the government of Ukraine, the Ukraine as a whole, has become and were made an explicit anti-Russia project. The nationalist issue has been mentioned very often. We mentioned that, of course, nationalists, ultra-nationalists, Nazi elements are there in many countries, in Ukraine and Russia, but in Ukraine, they've been playing the major influence on the government decision, on the government. They are in the government, and they have set on a course to become a very hostile outposts towards our country. The territory of Ukraine had been exploited by NATO very extensively. We objected to the Ukraine joining NATO, and we're not promised anything in this regard. In fact, it was explicitly said to us that it's up to Ukraine to join NATO, but in the meantime, the territory of Ukraine was exploited to and used to put all the NATO infrastructure in the territory on our immediate borders. So without joining NATO, de facto, Ukraine has become, in the military sense of the word, in military terms, has become a territory of the expanded NATO. And this is very rarely put forward in the Western narrative, if at all. But it is one of the aspects why we reacted so angrily and so forcefully to the rejection of all our suggestions and proposals, the latest of those related to the enlargement of NATO specifically, and to the conclusion of new agreements with the US. We are, in this context, are very disappointed with the position of Europe as at large, with the position of the major European countries. I'm not talking about minor ones, but because they have always been insignificant, but even major European countries opted to trail behind the US politics towards Russia, towards NATO enlargement. And effectively, especially now when Ukraine has been supplied at such pace with weapons, now it has very evidently become a conflict between us and NATO, with Ukraine being a tool. And they don't, I mean, the Western leaders don't even conceal the fact that they are prepared to fight with Russia on the Ukrainian battlefield till the last Ukrainian, and that is outrageous. The utterance of the foreign policy chief of the European Union, Mr. Borrell, are absolutely unacceptable. We sometimes, don't even we simply can't understand how major countries like France, like Germany, could ignore the very core national interests of their own countries, and the leaders of those countries ignore the interests of their countries, the interests of their people, playing into the U.S. hands, and the U.S. are very consistently pursuing their agenda, and we are of the opinion, and this opinion, I believe, is shared quite widely. The U.S. is pursuing the agenda of securing its major influence and major voice in the global politics. They may, like it always happens, honey is sweet, but the bee stings. Sometimes they do it by persuasion, sometimes by twisting hands, but softly or hardly they push and continue to work for their complete dominance in world affairs. Some may be happy with that, but Russia's not. Russia wants to be an independent power in world politics, to have a say in world politics, and not be in a position when, if it contradicts, not be in a position to be made to toe and to agree to the narrative that the US promotes and pursues. So this is the perception that we have towards the current tensions and the tensions between the US and Russia, between NATO and Russia, are at the basis of the current Ukrainian conflict. But I would like to again stress that that was not our choice. We wanted to agree and to find a compromise and a solution to the European security architecture peacefully. You cannot be, one part of Europe cannot be secure without the other part insecure, or at the expense of the security of the other part, and the other part is being Russia. And this is exactly what happened, and this is exactly what led to the current aggravation and the military conflict, to our complete regret and disappointment. Of course, you're correct, and we've been saying that all along. It's a tragedy for Ukraine, for Russia, for the whole of Europe, for the world at large. We are ready to start the negotiations whenever the Ukrainians are ready. But we have to sit and have a picture on what we can agree. At present, there is none. The last round we had in Turkey in March. At that round, the Ukrainians proposed in written form, gave us some proposals, and after that they reneged on them and opted, possibly at the advice of somebody, to continue fighting, and it continues till date. But we are hopeful for the best, and eventually there will be a diplomatic solution. There cannot be any other. But it would better be sooner than later.
Thank you. That was useful. I'm going to ask a layperson question. I have heard various US academics and think tankers detail the ways in which the NATO countries, principally the US, have, as you said, reneged on understandings post the dissolution of the Soviet Union in terms of expansion of NATO. But we spoke a little while ago about defense collaboration between India and Russia. I see Russia as a superpower as far as defense is concerned, and we can have a hypothetical construct in which Ukraine is a NATO member. And you don't have to comment or react to this. I'm just thinking aloud here. I see no scenario in which Ukraine as a NATO member can attack Russia. And Russia is not just a sophisticated military power, it is a nuclear weapon power and so on. So there could be very little chance of anyone ever dreaming of attacking Russia. But that is just my observation. So while I agree that there has been a systematic dilution and then reversal of the commitments made by the US and other NATO countries in terms of what they had said as far as enlargement of NATO is concerned. So that is true. That is a recorded fact from various sources, including from the US. But I also do not conceive of a situation where Ukraine can be a military threat to what I consider a mighty Russia. That's just my observation. If you wish, you may comment on it. But if you feel that you've said enough, that's fine too. But your last bit, you said that we need to move forward and look for a diplomatic solution. That means a negotiated settlement of this dispute. I remember that from history books about the rivalry, particularly at that time, the United Kingdom, England to be even more specific, to control Crimea. And as of now, Crimea is very much with Russia, and Russia also has, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, land access to a port called Mariupol. Given this kind of situation, what would be the contours of what Russia would agree to in if it is already a stated official position? I might have missed it. What would be the kind of settlement, negotiated agreement that Russia would feel comfortable about to bring this conflict to an end? What are you mentioned the discussions in Turkey and how Ukraine reneged on them, but if you could give us a sense of what are Russia's conditions under which, assuming that these are public, and roughly what would make Russia comfortable and the conflict would come to an end. You can see I'm pressing this point because for me, any kind of conflict which involves loss of life is regrettable.
Of course, as I say, we want to end the conflict as soon as possible. The situation is very fluid. The military actions are going on. What would be the ultimate compromise, the ultimate solution? I don't think anybody at the moment can answer that. But our goals have not changed. Those that we outlined from the very start. The protection of the eastern parts of the country, where with the majority of the Russian population. In fact, that was one of the reasons why we were forced to interfere militarily. You know, since 2014, the Ukrainians themselves have been in a military conflict with each other. I mean, the government in Kiev with the eastern parts of the country.
Donetsk and so on.
Donetsk and Luhansk. Zelensky even called those people species, which should vacate those territories. Why should they if they always lived there? but those people are the Russian-speaking majority in those territories. So the protection of those people is one of the goals, and again the creation and the agreement on Ukraine, which is neutral, which is a non-NATO member, which is not a hostile territory towards Russia. These are also the goals. And as President Putin has repeatedly stated, and the latest during the Eastern Economic Forum that's going on in Vladivostok, we are set to achieve those goals. But going back to your point about an unimaginable situation when Ukraine can attack Russia, or NATO can be a threat to militarily to Russia. It's not like that, you know. It's a question of a power projection. We're not talking about attacking NATO, attacking Russia, or Ukraine invading Russia. It's not about that. It's about the power projection and the hypothetical and upper hand of NATO to the detriment of Russia. You know, there should be a parity if we look at the if we don't have a I don't know how to put it, an enmity between NATO. If there is a controversy between NATO and Russia, we need to have a parity like it was during the Cold War. And if Ukraine is NATO member or is not, but NATO is there in the Ukrainian territory, they will have they will be in a favorable position to which we will be in no position to counter anything. They will have the upper hand in power projection, and on the basis of that pressure us on various political decisions. So it's not about possible future military actions. It's about the lack of parity between us when we are unable to hypothetically respond to a hypothetical military aggression.
That was useful. Let us move on to something that's going to happen next week. And there is going to be a summit-level meeting in Samarkand in Uzbekistan. It is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I don't know if everybody in this room knows, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has amongst its members Russia, China, India, all the Central Asian republics except Turkmenistan, I think. And it's going to meet in Samarkand, and we are familiar with Samarkand in India because that's the place from where the Mughal subsequent emperor in Delhi, Babur, came from. So is President Putin likely to attend this summit in Samarkand? Do we know anything concrete about that?
That's correct. As far as I know, he's going. This will be the summit at which the presidency in the organization will go to will go to India.
That's right.
For the next year. So next year India is going to preside in the organization, and we're looking at a very active year next. So President Putin is going to be there. As far as if we go by the news, the Chinese president is going, and probably the Indian Prime Minister is also going to attend. But you correctly mentioned it is an organization of the majority, almost absolute majority of the Central Asian states. We are participating. India, China, Pakistan is there. Iran it was decided last that Iran is going to be a full member, and the process has started for its full accession to the organization. There is a number of observers to the organization, and also the dialogue partners. And this is one of the major formats in that region, a consensus-based formats to promote trade and economic relations, humanitarian ties. Certainly, we discuss security issues in that format, and threats projected primarily from Afghanistan. Connectivity issues are being discussed and are being promoted. There are hundreds of various mechanisms and projects in implementation. This is a very successful example of close cooperation in the landlocked Central Asian region, and there are new aspirants to join. So it also indicates that the reputation and the benefits that the organization provides is being favorably regarded in a wider area of Eurasia.
Three major countries within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the RIC, some in the audience today may not know what is RIC, that is Russia, India, China, which meets not at the summit level but at the level of foreign ministers. And then we have a wider group called BRICS, which includes Brazil and South Africa as well. Now, given the border issues between India and China in Ladakh, that has been a little bit of a dampener, should we say. How do you see the situation evolving in these organizations, the SCO, BRICS, RIC, given this border situation in Ladakh where there are conflicting claims as to where exactly, of course the border is not delineated. So in that context, my question to you would be, Russia and China have demarcated the border. Are there any lessons that you can give to us, suggest to India, how to work out the border with China amicably, so we don't continue to have this situation at the border, and by then implication, not be able to collaborate and cooperate? I'm just saying this from the top of my head. I don't know how things will evolve. But my sense is that it's a little difficult to cooperate wholeheartedly when you have difficulties at the border and there are conflicting territorial claims. But Russia and before that Soviet Union have sorted out the border with China. Any lessons for us? Any tips for us?
Frankly, I didn't study that subject thoroughly and don't know much about our negotiations with China on the border, issues that we had and which we resolved. But I know that we've been in the process of resolving those issues we had for about 40 years. And it did not always go smoothly.
40 years, it took 40 years.
40 years.
Okay.
Around 40 years, to my knowledge, and there were ups and downs at various stages, even military clashes on the border, if I'm not mistaken, during the negotiation process. But eventually we were we proved successful. I mean, we and the Chinese. I believe that it is the clue to the success is the readiness to compromise. It's a give and take, and both sides, in our case, we and the Chinese, should be prepared, and we were prepared, and eventually it happened that way. We were prepared to compromise and found a compromise when we gave some and the Chinese gave some. So generally speaking, holistically, this may be one of the ways to the solution of a very complex and very sensitive issue like the border one. Please understand me correctly. I'm not making any suggestions towards the tensions between India and China on the border. This is none of my business. This is none of Russia's business. We have been very consistent in saying that this is a bilateral matter between India and China, and don't want to interfere or be part of it in any way, and don't want others to directly or indirectly influence anyone. We think that India as a superpower has, if I may put it like that, has its own head on its shoulders, like the Chinese have, and are perfectly capable of resolving the problems with its neighbor bilaterally or on its own. So this is our approach, and we are hopeful that a resolution is found as soon as possible. And as like the External Affairs Minister Sri Jaishankar said, and this was said before him, the 21st century belongs to Asia, and in the first place it belongs to India and China. So if we want progress and prosperity in Asia as a locomotive of progress in the 21st century, we certainly would welcome and would need would need India and China working together rather than to working against each other.
Thank you.
This is our aspiration and hope.
Thank you. I have just two more questions. One is about the SCO summit and the G20 summits that will take place in India. Do we have any confirmation, or is it too early, whether President Putin will be coming to India for one or both summits?
We are in constant touch through the foreign ministries, through other agencies on bilateral contacts and arrangements. I'm not in a position at the moment to confirm or deny. This is a work in progress, and the leaders have spoken since last December, when President Putin came to India with the visit. They've spoken several times, at least 4 times over the phone. They are participating in various formats, various summits. The SEO may be the one occasion. The G20 summit could be another one. So this is a thing in progress, and yes, we try to maintain the mechanism that we have of annual exchange of summits, which we established in 2000s, and last year it was the 24th meeting at the highest level between our countries.
I'd like to end with just one question about Mr. Gorbachev. He passed away, if I remember right, at the end of August. I think the last day of August. Please correct me if I'm wrong. For many in India, he was, and for me also, he was a visionary. But I think within first Soviet Union and later on Russia, there are mixed feelings about him, because there was a lot of suffering for the average Russian person in terms of suddenly prices are decontrolled and bread costs several 1,000% more than what it used to cost, and so on. And his personal popularity within Russia plummeted, and if I remember right, in 1996 he just got 0.5% of the vote. So what are your thoughts about Mr. Gorbachev, who was, for me at least, a transformational leader at the global level, but there might be other aspects of his leadership which may be viewed differently within Russia?
Correct. Yes, it's no secret that in Russia it's more a controversial figure rather than an outstanding one. But he was certainly a world, a leader of world dimension, a visionary, and the significance, of course, his significance cannot be denied in the introduction of changes to the Soviet system. There is of course another point of view that the Gorbachev has nothing to do with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Rather, the Soviet Union collapsed under the weight of the internal problems, and where the Gorbachev would not have mattered. But his role was certainly instrumental, so to say, in introduction of freedom, of press, freedom of expression of opinion. In my country, the Soviet system, of course, was very rigid and didn't allow to the diversity of political views. And from this sense, yes, he was, he should be regarded as a visionary, as a leader of a global significance. But then those reforms that he initiated led to the wild capitalism of the 1990s in Russia, when probably the will for changes and the lack of clear program led to the total collapse of economy. The 1990s were the golden age of organized crime in Russia. And Gorbachev is blamed Gorbachev in the first place, and one of who is blamed for that, and is still regarded as the one who allowed the collapse of the economy, and the one who ultimately was instrumental in those instrumental in not the one who wanted the best but didn't know how to
get it done,
and didn't have a clear program to be implemented. There cannot be freedom as such, in my opinion. It should be a controlled process. Otherwise, we get what we got in the 1990s in Russia, and the victory of President Putin in 2000s, was possible because people got fed up and completely tired of that unbridled freedom that we were faced with in 1990s because of those reforms Gorbachev initiated. So it is a very complex issue, and naturally he wanted the best, but we had what we had ultimately.
Well, as they say in English, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's right.
But let's not end on that note. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for having come to the Center for Social and Economic Progress. We're delighted to have you here with us and share your opinions on a variety of subjects, some very tricky and difficult ones too. And I wish you the best for the next year, because your president might be here for one or both summits, SCO and G20. So all the best of luck to you and more power to your elbow. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bhagwati.
A round of applause for the Ambassador.